the till we start the webinar and have the question section at the end. So yeah, hopefully everyone is staying warm and power is still on and cars are accessible to leave your driveway. I muted myself. I'm so sorry. We're gonna get started at about 6:05 and hopefully everyone's staying warm and doing good. Uh, and while we're all waiting, I just want to let everyone know that next month we are going to have another webinar, that will be on the economic value in organizing, and I believe that one will be on the 23rd of February, just to put that on everyone's radar. And that will be with CICE, which is the Chamber of Clean Innovation and Energy, or the Chamber of Innovation and Energy. Um, and apologies if you hear my cat in the background. And I'm gonna send out the link just one more time to make sure everyone has it. Right, I think we can get started right now, and just have more people trickle in as they need. So First, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming, and I'm very excited to welcome our panel. And let me share my screen with the presentation. So, first, I just wanted to go over tonight's program. We're gonna do introductions and then just talk about our panelists, and then we're gonna kind of have each one touch on their different types of organizing, and then do some cross-panel questions, and then if the audience has any questions. So first, this is being put on by Ohio Citizen Action, and we inform, organize, and mobilize people to advocate for public interests across issues and campaigns, and our campaigns connect Ohioans to build a movement to protect democracy and create an equitable and sustainable future. My name is Joe Baldwin. I'm our Senior Rural Projects Manager, and I primarily work on utility scale solar projects. And so I just wanted to talk about how I've worked on campaigns in both Fairfield and Morrow County, and on the ballot initiative in Richland County. And so my favorite part of my job is working with the residents of each area. And so today I'll be talking to you we'll be talking more about the residents and their lived experiences in organizing. Um, so first we have Lara Flaute, and she is a nurse practitioner, gardener, chicken tender, and mom from Fairfield County. And she became involved in organizing for industrial solar by being in the right place at the right time. And she finds the work fulfilling because of its potential to avert the worst effects of climate change and to promote community resilience. And then Rick Fryman and his wife have lived in Morrow County since 1979, and they have been blessed with employment, good health, and a beautiful home and wonderful friends. They are thankful to live in a safe and healthy environment that has given them the freedom to choose as they live. Rick believes that Morrow County is evolving and already engaged with many commercial projects that are improving the area on both the social and economic level. And the citizens of Cardington Township now have a unique opportunity to benefit from its own $100 million project. Pending approval, Crossroads Solar Grazing Center will generate an additional tax benefit to their area, and this is an opportunity he feels lucky to work on, and works collaboratively with a company that will produce clean energy for future generations and provide local tax relief. He is involved by sharing the truth about commercial scale projects, and working with communities and property owners to preserve their rights, keep the public safe, and protect the environment. And then Addie Goodwin is a dedicated and engaged member of the Richland community, and she was recently elected as the president of Richland County Young Democrats. She's currently working on the Richland County property rights referendum, and this is helping her community fight against government overreach. With her involvement in multiple local initiatives, she remains deeply committed to public service and looks forward to making a meaningful impact in her community. So I wanted to thank everyone for being here, and especially everyone on the panel. Does anyone on the panel want to add to why they are a part of, or like what got them interested in utility scale solar? All right, then I can move on. So first, we will talk about Fairfield County with Laura. So in August, the Eastern Cottontail Project was approved by the Ohio Power Siting Board, and the Eastern Cottontail Project has state permission to start installing solar panels on about 1,500 acres of private farmland in Walnut Township. And Cottontail Solar will create about 500 temporary construction jobs as well as some permanent jobs. The 220 megawatt site is set to generate enough electricity to power about 42,000 homes. And sheep are expected to eventually graze under the solar panels, combining energy production and traditional agriculture. So, Laura, you bravely stood up to the Ohio Power Siting Board public hearing and testified. What gave you the courage to testify at the hearing, and what motivated you along the way?
So as I put in my bio, I kind of fell into advocating for this project. I actually think that I got like a postcard from the developers that started it all. Um, but yeah, the first big thing that I did was show up and give testimony for the Power Sighting Board hearing and basically just said, uh, my future and my kids' future is here in Fairfield County, and we want it to be one that is marked by our resilience as a community, by our ability to create our own power in a clean way. I want my kids to continue being able to live in the environment that we are creating for the future. And I think that the hardest thing about it really was um, having to like show up at 3:30 or something and wait until 6:30 to talk. It was very heavily attended, and and I didn't know anyone. I moved to Fairfield County in 2019, so this isn't an area that I have a lot of connections in. But since going to that hearing, I was able to get some neighbors to put letters together and send them to the Power Sighting Board. And as you heard, we got the project approved. And I feel like that has built some momentum. And now there's another Fairfield County industrial solar project that is being considered by the Sighting Board as we speak.
So before the Ohio Power Sighting Board hearing, what doubts or fears did you have about speaking publicly, and what helped you move past them?
I, I don't usually have a lot of doubts about speaking publicly. Um, I was a Peace Corps volunteer, and I was a high school teacher in that capacity. And I lost my fear of crowds when I went and did that. Um, but I think that ultimately, I will say, as I sat and waited to talk at this hearing, it was kind of scary. There's a big group in our county that was united against this project. And I saw them at the Millersport Sweet Corn Festival. I'd see them you see them at the county fair, you see them all over the place, and they were always so angry. And they showed up together in matching shirts. And every time somebody like adjacent to this group got a chance to talk, they were um, just had a lot of really, really negative things to say about this project. A lot of them I consider to be coming from misinformation. But what bolstered me as I sat and waited for my turn to talk was the people who came out in support of this project came from all walks. You had sheep farmers, you had union construction workers, you had people whose family owned the property that they're planning on renting to this project. You had people who came down from Columbus for environmental reasons. And so that was actually just incredibly uh, exciting to see all these different people. A lot of us did not know each other before we showed up, and we all came and said, this is worth my time to stand up and say, I want this in my community.
I love that. So for my last question for you for right now is for residents who may think I'm not an expert, I shouldn't speak up, what would you tell them?
I think, on the one hand, the Power Sighting Board and other agencies like this, they're not necessarily interested in having experts show up for all the hearings that they're doing. They're interested in community members. I'm a nurse by trade, and I do not have, I don't have any um, engineering or, industrial background to speak of, but the Power Sighting Board is going to get those reports. Um, and, any of the different agencies that might have to approve a project like this, they're going to hear from experts. What they want to know is, do the people who live here want this? And are they invested in it? And are they interested in these jobs, in the tax revenue, in the benefits to the community? So I think that's the main reason that I got involved is, yeah, I'm absolutely not related. And in fact, it's in a part of Fairfield County that I drive through, but I don't live in. But I see this as, you know, the state of Ohio is going to build its resiliency by building out solar. and I want to be a part of it.
Thank you so much. I really love everything you've had to say about residents within communities and how important you are. To transition a little bit, Rick is one of our residents within Morrow County. And so Crossroads is a proposed dual use solar project that does solar energy and land production. And its facility would be located in Westfield, Lincoln, and Cardington Townships in Morrow County. And the project would have the ability to generate up to 94 megawatts of power, and the fenced area will occupy about 559 acres of agricultural land planted with native grasses and other vegetation. This can be returned to farming after 40 years, and the grass inside the facility will be maintained primarily by grazing sheep. And so in December, supporters gathered to testify in front of the Ohio Power Siting Board for their public hearing. And so Rick has been an instrumental part in organizing the county residents to support solar. What was your driving factor behind your support, Rick?
Well, the main thing was all the misinformation that I first heard when we came back from being in a different part of the country. But and I'll share with you that half the time we live in Arizona and the other half in Ohio because of family reasons. But I thought the project was a done deal back at the end of 2025. So I was surprised when we returned that there was all this misinformation that was being circulated around the community about solar projects. So I attended one of the local open houses that Crossroads entertained, and that got me interested in really what makes solar work. Um, I had the opportunity to visit three solar facilities. The Great Bend project is down by the Ohio River. They actually allowed me to go on site, see how the construction process was being done, and they may be close to being online, if not already. I also attended the project that was down at Brown County. Brown County is eventually going to be a 2,000 acre project, generating over 200 megawatts. Again, getting more information. I when actually both projects were kind of hard to find because if I didn't have someone to help me a little bit, I might still be looking because they find areas that are not that traffic heavy. So, and that's one thing that I have a little bit of problem with people saying about the unsightliness of solar projects. I don't see it. I also don't see the negative environmental impact that a lot of people are saying their projects bring. Um, I don't understand how you can turn down tax relief at this time. And those were the things that I was kind of looking at. And when I mentioned tax relief, we've had a school levy, last two levies, last 2 years, only 2 mills, and we've been unable to pass that. So here's an opportunity to take that out of the equation. Tax money can be used elsewhere because the schools are going to be taken care of. So the misinformation was a problem. I tried to bring facts back that I um, encountered with the projects that are going around the state. We actually have a project going in the northern part of Morrow County that's already underway. So I guess that was my reason for involvement. I also spoke at the Ohio Power Siting Board hearing. Uh, Unlike Laura, I knew everybody there because we've lived in a small community for 40 years. So it was pretty much equally divided as far as support and people that were against the project.
So, what would you say is your biggest obstacle to organizing support in Morrow County, and how did you work through it?
Um, Actually, the support was there, but a lot of times, and I attended all the trustee meetings. I spoke before the commissioners, but I found a lot of times I was the only one there. Um, but I know that there was quite a letter campaign in support of the project. So I just tried to word of mouth, try to get people to write letters, show up for the meeting. And as it turned out at the the Power Board, Ohio Power Board hearing, that it was about 50-50. It was about equal who spoke up and against and who was for the project.
What role did relationships and trust play in moving people from quietly to supportive to publicly engaged?
Oh, that's an interesting question because it is tough for some people to speak. Again, I've never had any issues with that being in front of the public, speaking, because I at least I'm prepared and have notes. So I was just encouraging people to come to the meeting. We had an open house. I mean, kind of, we had a room set aside, so anybody that was speaking at the hearing, could kind of relax a little bit. It sounded like Laura had to wait around quite a bit to get to her time to present. But usually about 10 minutes before we had the individuals that would be speaking would come in. Of course, I sat through the whole meeting. I was just fascinated by the different opinions. Uh, and I guess the most disturbing thing is if I kept hearing the same information again and again and again, like um, the glare from the solar panels is going to be a danger to the people. We're never going to be able to reclaim the land. Um, well, why don't they just sell the property instead of lease it? And I kept hearing this again and again and again. It's like the more you hear lies, they expect you to believe it. And that's what I have a problem with, the truth.
Thank you so much, Rick. So I wanted to move over to Addie to talk about Richland County. And so for those of you who don't know, Richland County, the county commissioners passed a ban on solar siting in 18 out of or 11 out of 18 of Richland's county townships. And so the Richland County Citizens for Property Rights and Job Development was created by a group of local folks who didn't think this ban was right for their county. And when a ban like this is passed by the county commissioners, there's an opportunity to get it on the ballot for the citizens to decide. And so Richland County locals did just that with an extremely short deadline of 30 days to collect 3,320 signatures. They got to work. And so Addie was one of the people on the ground to make this campaign a reality. And so what would you say gave you the push to be one of the leaders within your community?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I've always believed that it's really important to be the change that you wish to see. When you see something happening in your community that you don't agree with, it's really important to stand up and say, I don't like that. I actually was in Philadelphia for a convention when we got the call that this was going through. And one of our senior party members called and let us know that it was happening and then let us know that we were pushing back. It happened very quickly. By the time we were back from Philly, we we knew that we were doing petitions, we knew that we were circulating, and we got right to work. And it was a very quick moving process. Um, it was a lot of local drive, a lot of volunteer hours, and it happened very quickly, but it was obviously successful. And we're really proud of that.
With such a short timeline to collect signatures, how did you avoid burnout and keeping the momentum going?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the best thing that I personally did to avoid burnout was switching up my location often. I collected signatures at multiple different festivals and fairs, at my favorite coffee shop, at local meetings, and from my family and friends. I think that switching up my environment kept things really fresh and interesting. It allowed me to talk to a lot of different demographics that maybe I wouldn't have spoken to if I only hyperfixated on one of those locations. Um, it made for interesting conversations and different conversations, and it just kept it more interesting and fun. Felt less like a chore, It was
Yeah.
like a fun opportunity to engage with my community.
So, how do you think the youth involvement impacts the tone or direction of the campaign?
Yeah, I think that youth involvement keeps things really exciting. Younger people are really passionate and energetic. I think that when other younger people who are not involved see their peers who are doing the work and talking about it, they choose to stop and listen, which can lead to more youth involvement or even just a more passionate youth base who's willing to talk about it. The conversations happen over coffee, they happen at parties, they happen at dinner. Um, and they're lively and exciting, and they really keep the movement driven and alive and fiery.
Thank you so much, Addie. So now I have a few questions just for anyone on the panel tonight. And my first one is, what is one common misconception about utility scale solar that you hear over and over, and have you responded to it?
I think the biggest one that we're hearing in Richland County is that, it makes the land unfarmable and that the land is only used for the solar panels. And that is simply not true. Generally, the best thing that I've done is pull up, and this sounds kind of silly, but pull up pictures of farms that are like multi-use and show people like, no, that's not true. Look at this farm in this location. They have sheep grazing underneath, or whatever the case may be for what they're doing with the solar panels. It's just giving examples and saying, hey, that's not right, but I appreciate your input, kind of thing, letting people know that there are options to farm that land as well as have the solar fields.
If I could add to that, I had a couple things that that is something I hear a lot too, and a couple things that I've responded with. Number one, I've told people about my parents' trip to Germany last summer. Um, they they in Germany, there is like full scale crop agriculture, vegetable agriculture under a lot of solar panels. And they saw it everywhere. And they came home and they were like, that was amazing. And I mean, it's not just there, but my parents were there, so I can relate. The other thing that I think is kind of far off, and I don't necessarily have studies to point to, but soil degradation is a really big concern globally. And putting aside certain amounts of land for 40 years could potentially help us to avoid having unfarmable land 40 years from now. I know in Fairfield County, the contract that they signed, it includes decommissioning of these panels at the end of the 40-year span, should the families who have them on their land want the panels taken down. The contract includes taking them down. So if they do 40 years from now want to start farming, that will be a possibility. The companies are going to make that possible.
Well, so with the farming issue, as far as acreage, one thing that I was adamant about through the whole process was Morrow County, where we live, has 144,000 acres of tillable farmland. This project at Crossroads is going to be less than 1,000 acres. We're talking about less than 1% of the farming land was going to be used for this project, and you still would reap a lot of benefits from it. Um, as far as farming goes, I know that Ohio State University has already developed, or not, well, they are developing, but they're researching what type of farming equipment are we going to need to harvest certain types of crops that may be grown underneath these solar panels. We've talked about sheep, we've talked about, some other things like even what dandelions can produce, and they're pollinators. I mean, what kind of pollinators can you grow with underneath the solar panels? And this is one thing that we're having less and less of is taking care of our environment. So the solar panels have just the opposite effect as to what a lot of people are claiming. I see a lot of benefits to it. And there's still things that haven't even come up yet that we haven't even considered. As far as the farmland being used for farmers and the owners of the property, um, currently farmers receive about $258 an acre to have their land leased for agriculture. These solar projects are going to provide $1,000 per acre for the landowners, which I'm all for receiving that kind of benefit. So, yeah, so in 40 years, I'm not sure why you'd want to not continue the lease. So, and who knows what farming is going to be like in the next 10 years.
Thank you all for that. So my next question is, how did local opposition show up differently in your counties, and what strategies worked best to address it?
So, as I stated, we had a pretty well organized group of people that basically collectively was pushing against this project, mostly from a place of kind of misinformation. You know, their concerns were about their rights as adjacent property owners to this land, about the potential devaluing of the land around the project, around uh, a lot of like environmental, I think probably the funniest thing that was said at the power siting board meeting was somebody referred to the panels as stinky. And we all were just kind of like, I don't know. Um, One thing that I thought was interesting, and this was a decision made by the siting board. They um, only allowed one person to speak who was actually from that organized group. They said, you have organized, you've come as one block, and um, you have written letters and so on and so forth, like, so one representative can talk from your group. Now, that being said, there were still quite a few people that came, I think, probably not as organizers of that group, but still got a chance to speak. And yeah, there was, I mean, I feel like there was a lot of anger in that block of people. And I think that the vast majority of the people who came in favor of the project came enthusiastically, excited about the possibilities that this project was going to have, excited about the future for Fairfield County, how many tax dollars it was going to raise, et cetera. And I think there's a lot of power there.
I have a question for Laura while we've got her here. In at the meeting, and when was the meeting, and what would you say the feeling was in a room? 50-50, 60-40?
I'm
Uh,
going to need Joe's help with this. Was it last January? Like January
I
25?
believe so.
I think it was. It was like the end of January 2025. And I was sitting next to Bella Bogan, and I think at the time that I left after I talked, because this meeting actually went to a second day. I think that it was like slightly more than 50% in favor. But
oh,
it wasn't, it was pretty similar, but I do think there were slightly more people speaking in favor.
so at our meeting that we had in December, we just had it last month. I would say everyone was allowed to speak. So I didn't know, I mean, pro or con. So they opened it up to everyone, and we were able to do our hearing in one day. One evening took care of us. So I think we started at 6 and we were pretty much done by 8:30, 9 o'clock. Wouldn't you say, Joe?
Yes. Does anyone else on the panel have anything to add to this question?
Yeah, obviously with Richland County, we don't have an active project, so my answer is similar but different. Our biggest local opposition did come from disagreeing passerbys. Our project wasn't as published, or not our project, but our petition efforts were not as well published because there isn't an official project. Um, so we haven't had a whole lot of people speaking super negatively aside at first, aside from like the commissioners. But when I would be at like the festivals and the fairs, for example, I worked under the Democratic Party tent, which obviously, in that kind of environment, a Ruby Red County, it brings in a lot of people who are kind of essentially looking to heckle us. The biggest thing that I can advise people to do is to know your talking points and really understand them. Do the research, know what you're talking about. We had a lot of people who approached us with the intention of starting an argument who ended up signing our petition because we had thoughtful and respectful conversation. I think it's really also very important to know your audience and to make sure that you're using language that appeals to them. A lot of these people, like I said, were at festivals and fairs in Ruby Red counties, and they do have preconceived notions about wind and solar energy that we are not going to change in a 5-minute conversation in that kind of environment. So we chose to make the conversation more about property rights, government overreach, skyrocketing utility costs, things that everyday people can relate to. And I think that that really helped us get good ground with people who may have otherwise disagreed with us.
Thank you so much, Addie, and thank you to the other panelists. So, I have two more questions for you, and one of the last ones is, how did working together change how you see your own power as residents?
I mean, standing up against our county commissioners was huge. These guys have so much power, especially in these little counties. And it felt really incredible to be able to band together and tell them that we don't appreciate the decision that they made. A lot of times, there's an idea that what elected officials say goes, and that simply is not true. There is power in community. You just have to really come together and work as an organized, unified movement.
If no one else has anything to add to that, for my closing question, I'm just wanting to ask all of you, from someone watching this who cares about their community but doesn't know where to start, what is one concrete step that they can take after today?
I would say find out what others around you have an opinion about things. You gotta search out the people that think like you do as far as have the same opinions. Uh, I had done, like I said, I've been around to many projects. I guess the next thing I went out and did was put a petition together and had people start signing it. So then I felt like I was more empowered to to approach the commissioners, to approach the trustees. I'm going to add one thing here, a couple of things that I could have done better, and I guess the one thing that we always need to do is, especially in this time of misinformation, you really got to follow up what you do. So I've been talking to people and things like that. I talked to the trustees several times, and I thought I was following up, but right at the end, we had some decisions that were made differently. And I kind of felt like maybe I should have asked them, has anything happened to change your mind? Put it back in their court. Or have you heard anything that might, change you from a neutral to taking a position? Because our big thing from the start was neutrality. I didn't think the commissioners needed to do anything. I didn't think the trustees needed to do anything. But because of pressure, they did. And that also goes to the legislators. I was surprised at some of the letters that our local representatives wrote, that are representing us in Ohio. Again, they were representing just one side, not both sides. So follow up, and anything that you share with a commissioner or a trustee or other people, make sure you share that with the legislators. I wish I had sent the petitions that I had signatures for, even though it didn't relate to them, but they needed to know what was going on with their with the people that they're supposed to be representing.
I will give some advice that I wish I had followed myself. If you, especially, are in a rural area, get to know your trustees and your county commissioners, or get to know who they are. And when there are general public meetings, try to attend them. And I say that I don't do it because I've got two little kids, and it's they're always at like 7:30, and that's bedtime. So I haven't. I mean, I've gotten to know who they are, but I haven't attended a meeting yet, and it's on my list of things to do. I think when you actually, when you have a relationship with the people making decisions in your county, or at least like Addie was saying, like who's going to be on your side and who's going to try and make sweeping decisions that affect everybody without taking any input. That focuses you.
I also think that it's really important if you are looking for something to do in your community and a way to get involved. I think looking into local organizations is a huge help. Finding that community, like Rick was saying, is super important. But if you're not sure where to start, look into clubs, parties, organizations that feel the same way that you did. Even elected officials can point you in the right direction if you can find a council person or a commissioner or a trustee that is pretty similar in worldview to you. Find out, talk to them, figure out what kind of organizations are in your area that are that agree with you, that are willing to and able to point you in the right direction. Um, I mean, like I said, I got a call about this when I was in Philadelphia because I am in these organizations. I got this call and I knew as soon as we drove back into town that that was something that I was going to be working on and getting started with. And I think that there's power in community, and having this pre-built foundation is incredibly helpful.
Thank you all so much, both the panelists and the attendees. So now I just wanted to open up if anyone had questions from the audience. Feel free to just speak up now.
I'll jump in with a question. That's okay. I
Yeah,
can't
hi
find the hand
Rachel.
raise thing. Hi. This is Rachel Cutzley. I'm in the Columbus area. Um, I had a question for Rick about the Crossroads project. I think if I'm remembering correctly, the OPSB staff just reversed their finding and changed from supporting to saying it should not be approved. And I'm curious because you mentioned that there was pressure like put on trustees or commissioners. If you can talk about like where is that pressure coming from, or like what, if you know, like what are the reasons for whoever that is opposing a project?
Yeah, that was an interesting change of direction that still baffles me. So, going into December, the Ohio Power Siting Board had written a positive recommendation for moving forward with the project. There were certain language that they used in their statement that caused one of the trustees in our township, Cardington Township, a friend of mine, to change his mind. He reversed from neutrality to taking a position against the project from what the Ohio Power Siting Board had written. So then the Ohio Siting Board takes his comments, and that's what caused, because he voted against the project. So from that instance, they switched from a positive recommendation to a negative recommendation. And that's why I just mentioned follow-up, because I had talked to that trustee the Sunday before. I was just being casual, how are things going, etc. But I should have asked him, hey, is anything happening with changing your opinion on staying neutral? Does that answer your question, Rachel? I know, I'm still
Yeah, thank you.
dumbfounded by that. Yeah, I mean,
Me
it
too.
was a matter of happenstance so the Ohio Power Siting Board actually caused the switch. Now, because of that, all the townships, Westfield, Lincoln, and Cardington, which I'm part of, um, they all voted against the project. So that's what caused the Ohio Power Siting Board to change their opinion. So I don't know if there was pressure. I think because the Cardington trustees for 6 months had stayed neutral. Then all of a sudden, because of what the Ohio Power Siting Board, they took an opinion.
Thank you so much, both Rachel and Rick. Does anyone else have any questions? Um,
Well, I have a question, even though I'm on the panel. What do we need to do moving forward to give support to Richland County?
Yeah, thank you so much. We are always looking for volunteers. We're always looking for support. I would say, as of right now, you could go to our website. We also are doing, I need to look up what that web address is. So give me just a minute and I'll drop it in the chat. We also are doing a volunteer canvas event on Saturday that is a deep canvassing training in Richland County. It's on Saturday. It's at noon at our local library, the main branch, because we have a couple. Um, that would be a great start. We would love to have you. But I also will drop the link to our website. I believe there's a volunteer button on there. And if there's not yet, there will be very soon. Um,
I can drop the
that's kind.
website too.
Oh, thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. Yeah, that would be, I think, where you start. But other than that, I mean, talking about it in other communities. If you have any contacts in Richland County, Rick, I know you mentioned you're from Morrow, so we are neighbors. We are right there. Talk to people about how you feel. We welcome any and all support that we have. So thank you.
Will there be a campaign, like a committee for a campaign up through Richland County on this elected? It's going to come to the ballot in May, correct?
Mhm. Yeah, we do have a committee going right now. OCA is helping us with that. We have quite a few members on our local committee. We have like volunteer organizers. We're we just launched our website. We'll be launching social media soon. So actually, that's another thing. Once that's up, which should be in the next like 2 days, you can follow that. There is a current Facebook page. It is the I'm sorry, I'm gonna mess this up because I always do. Please bear with me. It's a long name. It is the Richland County Citizens for Property Rights and Job Development, I believe. If you start typing that in, it will pop up. It's a little green circle for the profile picture. And that's gonna change to the no ban language here in the next 2 days. Um, but yeah, that would be another great way to follow along with what we're doing. We're going to be starting launching things really soon publicly. Kind of our kickoff event is that deep canvassing training.
Right.
Thank you.
I dropped in the chat just our volunteer canvas event if you're interested and the website. Does anyone else have any questions before I am going to move on just to a few announcements?
It's John Makeley. I'm from Richland County also. I just want to advise people to stay up to date on what your commissioners are doing. We were kind of caught flat-footed. Uh, we didn't realize until the last minute, about 2 weeks before they were going to vote on the resolution to ban the large scale, that this was even going on. But fortunately, with OCA's help, we were able to get it on the ballot. But just, commissioners publish minutes, and I would just say check those minutes and make sure there's nothing in there.
Thank you for that, John.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I just wanted to share super quickly. If you want to learn more, I did drop the stuff for the volunteer deep canvas launch in the chat. And make sure to keep an eye out for our next webinar focusing on economic benefits of solar energy with CICE, and stay up to date by following our Instagram at Ohio Citizen Action. And if you have any additional questions, you can reach out to me. My name's Joe Baldwin, and it's jbaldwin@ohiocitizen.org. So thank you all so much again for attending, and I really appreciate your continued support.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe, for having us here today. I think this has been super interesting and fun.
I'm glad. Yeah, so if anyone wants to stay on and chat, you're more than welcome to. But if not, I hope you have a great rest of your night and to stay warm.
All right, guys. Take care. Thanks, everyone.